Hey everybody, Tommy here with TFL Car, and today we are taking a look at this, the all-new Toyota Crown. And I have to say, this is one of the most confusing cars of the year. But first, a word from this month's sponsor.
It took a while to get up here. We started out around 1959. But we didn't do all that just to get here. We did it to give you a truck that'll take you anywhere. This is the new Nissan.
The name Crown is Toyota's longest continuous running passenger vehicle nameplate. It dates all the way back to 1955. That's nearly 70 years. But this new Crown's a little bit interesting because at first glance, it's a sedan. But it also is pretty tall. Now in the presentation, Toyota called this an elevated sedan. You see, the height of this vehicle is roughly 4 inches taller than the Toyota Camry. The idea is you have a higher seating position, it's easier to get in and out of, you have a better view out of the front. But then of course in the rear, you don't have a hatch, you've got a traditional trunk. Now Toyota is very proud of the fact that they're still building a sedan. They're calling this a full-size sedan. It kind of sort of maybe replaces the Avalon, which is now a vehicle that has went away. And they said they targeted cars like the Nissan Maxima and the Kia Stinger when they were developing this vehicle. But what do you think this is? Is this a sedan? Is it an SUV? Is it an elevated sedan? Leave me a comment in the section below. The story with the Crown gets even more confusing when you consider that even though this vehicle is taller than a traditional sedan, the ground clearance is just 5.8 inches. So it's nowhere near as high riding from a ground clearance standpoint as a traditional Toyota crossover SUV. Now let's talk about the powertrains. There are two models and they are both hybrids. The base model is a naturally aspirated 4-cylinder hybrid, but this one is the Hybrid Max. And the Hybrid Max, Toyota says, is their first ever performance-oriented hybrid. This model uses a turbocharged 2.4-liter gasoline engine mated to the hybrid system with a total system output of, ready for it, 340 horsepower, but the crazy number, 400 foot-pounds of torque. Toyota is targeting 0 to 60 in 5.7 seconds. Now, every Crown comes standard with all-wheel drive, but the all-wheel drive system between the standard model and the Hybrid Max is different. The standard Crown uses all-wheel drive on demand, so there is no drive shaft between the engine and the rear axle. Instead, you've got a separate motor in the rear end. And then with the standard hybrid system, it only kicks on the all-wheel drive when it needs it. With the Hybrid Max, similar setup, however, that rear motor is always active. So at no point is there less than 30% of power coming from the rear end. It's always more than 30% of available system power coming from the back. So it's always engaged, which is pretty funky. From an exterior design standpoint, the Crown is a pretty unusual looking vehicle, and this one, the top spec Platinum, you can get in a two-tone look. So as you can see, we've got this exterior red color, but then all across the middle of the vehicle is actually a black. So a very unusual design in 2022. Another unusual thing, every Crown comes standard with LED headlights, but the base model has a two kind of pod setup. This one has the quadruple pod LED, so you actually have 4 individual pods. But let me know what you think of the comment section of the Crown design. Now, wheel options. The base car has 19-inch wheels. There's also a 20-inch wheel option. This one, 21-inch wheels. Toyota says this is the largest wheel they've ever fitted to a production passenger sedan. Now, along the side, you've got this kind of funky triangular insert there along the doors, a sloping roofline, and then in the rear, this feels very Lucid Air to me, the way this is creased and then makes a separate haunch for the rear end. Of course, this is also a two-tone look, which is pretty unusual. And then one long continuous LED light bar along the back of the vehicle. And check out these little louvers built in underneath the Toyota emblem, and then Crown spelled out in large letters. You can view the Toyota Crown as the successor to the outgoing Toyota Avalon, right? They're both full-size flagship Toyota sedans. And on the inside, there are certain things which I think the Avalon did better, and then there are certain things that I think the Crown does better. So let's talk about those. Now, first of all, the Avalon had an amazing interior, and in some ways, I don't feel that the Crown lives up to that standard. The overall design is very monotone, and there are just a lot of black, hard, scratchy surfaces. So for example, this little divider between the driver and the passenger, across the dash, none of this really feels all that premium. And in the Avalon, it did same thing with the door panels, very monotone and not a very high quality feeling material. But there are other parts which I really like. Now we're going to go ahead and start up the hybrid system. So foot on the brake, Of course, comes into life. A lot of times the engine doesn't turn on right away because it is a full hybrid. The dual screens look great. So we're looking at two 12-inch infotainment screens, and the look, the layout is very, very good. So this main screen is quite similar to what you'd find, for example, in the Toyota Tundra, which is both a good and a bad thing in my opinion. It's not my favorite infotainment system out there. It can be a little glitchy, a little laggy. The user profiles do take some time to set up, at least from my experience with the Tundra. But once you get the hang of it, it's pretty easy to use, it's pretty fast, and it's pretty self-explanatory. And I love the fact that they still give you an old school volume knob. So many manufacturers going away from the volume knob. I'd love its little buddy right here next to it, the tune knob, but hey, at least that's a nice start. Of course, it's got your full phone connectivity. The colors are good. The speed, kind of hit and miss in terms of how quick it goes between screens, but it also shows you good vehicle information. For example, like the energy flow, you can see the power distribution to the battery. You can see how full the battery is. You can find some trip information in here, comfort. You can control the heated and the ventilated seats from the screen, heated steering wheel. So a lot of that's really quite good. Now this model, if we go into the camera view, has the full 360-degree camera. It also does this little animation where you can see the crown, and I like that in this model the color of the crown is matched to the vehicle, and I think you can actually select that as well in the system. Just lots and lots of kind of interesting views and interesting and useful screens throughout the camera functionality. Let's go ahead and quit out of those. Now below the main infotainment screen, you're going to find hard controls for climate and for heated seats. So you've got toggles to increase and decrease the climate temperature. All of these controls feel very nice, very premium. Heated seats, ventilated seat buttons. We've got automatic functionality there. This is really, really well done. And another thing which is really, really well done, the Qi wireless charger, actually probably my favorite Qi wireless charger I've experienced. Your phone slots in there vertically. You can still access it quite easily if you had to when you stop at your destination. You can pull your phone out. It also has this nice little slant to it, so it seems to work well with the iPhones with the larger cameras on the back of them. I think this is really, really good. Now, if we had the Platinum, we'd have like a self-parking button here. This Limited does not have it, but we do have the view button for the cameras, 2 USB-C ports, and this little divider in the cup holder allows you to kind of configure your storage capability. Dual cup holders, well placed, easy to get to. The shifter in the crown, once again, lined in that bronze, but it's similar to a Prius, where you pull back for drive, left and forward for reverse, and then you got your regen setting if you go straight back, and then B for park. The Platinum trim with the Hybrid Max that we were just looking at had paddle shifters for the 6-speed automatic transmission. This model is not the Max, so we don't get the paddle shifters. Now behind the cup holders, you're going to find a fairly large center armrest with this little slidey cup holder. You also have a conventional USB-A port down there, as well as 12-volt power. Now moving away from the center display to the primary info screen for the cluster, it is configurable. You can see and display many different settings, and I find it to be quite easy to use. Let's go ahead and hold OK, change some of the settings. You can see adaptive cruise. You can go through all sorts of different information, and also when you change the different drive modes, you can actually get this cool little animation which showcase which drive modes you have selected. And if we were in the Hybrid Max, we'd also have Sport S Plus as well, because that model has adaptive dampers. Steering wheel, we talked about briefly, but lots of controls. Toyota Safety Sense 3.0, adaptive cruise control, lane centering, automatic lane changes, really good system. You got this little system here which monitors, makes sure you're paying attention. And then over here, active high beams, as well as our windshield wiper heaters. We've got the memory seat controls over here, and then we have 4 automatic one touchdown windows, which is really quite good. Up top, this model is a panoramic sunroof. You can push this button to open and close it. Just like that, it'll glide on closed, seal off the cabin. Seat comfort is good, headroom in the front is very, very good. But let's go ahead and take a peek in the rear seat and see what that has to offer. Now this is my driving position at 6 feet tall, and now we're gonna jump into the back. Legroom is sufficient. It's not enormous, but it is quite good. Headroom, however, starts to run into a slight issue. I think if you were under like 5'10", this would probably be fine, but 6 feet tall, you're running into some clearance issues. Now in the back here, you do see additional speakers. This has an 11 speaker JBL audio system, rear air vents. We've got USB-C ports back here. And then if we fold down this little armrest, a couple of cup holders, which is a nice touch. And then dome lights up top in full LED. All right, I think we make our way to the trunk and see what that has to offer. Now, one interesting thing about getting into the trunk of a Crown, there's no obvious way to pop the back because the button is super hidden. Underneath the rear light bar is this little tiny button, and then you can pop open the back. As you can see, my camera bag fits beautifully. 15 cubic feet worth of space and a huge opening to get into the trunk. 40-60 split there, and the split opening's a little bit smaller. If we look underneath the rear floor, temporary spare tire, but at least it has a temporary spare tire. And then Toyota Crown there, and the floor mat does not have a power boot release. And I can't help but thinking, you know, maybe it would be a little bit more useful if it had a full lift open hatch. I think that would be a nice touch. The Toyota Crown goes on sale early next year, and we don't have pricing or fuel economy figures yet. Now, there are a lot of things to love about the Crown. I love the fact that it's a standard all-wheel drive. Living in Colorado, having that standard all-wheel drive is an absolute bonus for snowy months. I also like the fact that you can get a 400 pound-feet of torque model with that turbocharged hybrid engine and, of course, a 6-speed automatic transmission. I think that's really cool. What I don't like, I'm not very impressed with the interior. The back seat is not as good as a conventional SUV, and I'm just still not really sure what it is. This whole high riding sedan thing is just a little bit confusing to me. Now let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Am I off my rocker? And as always, this has been Tommy with TFL Car. We'll see you on the next video.